If you watch this whole video, you will become more tactical, your brain will expand, and you will become a master of strategic combat in your favorite role-playing game. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA, so they are not legally admissible in any court. I digress. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is Templar's Tabletop, where we're all about making your role-playing games AAA. Affordable, approachable, and awesome. And today we're making your tactics awesome by looking at how can you make more tactical decisions as a player, how can you improve your tactics as a GM, and I owe some of my rules-heavy gamers a slight apology. All of that is coming up and more, so sit back, relax, like, comment, subscribe, and let's get to the content. Tactics, what are they? What are we trying to achieve? In my mind, I think of tactics as making strategic choices on a battlefield, on making decisions that matter. And that's the key thing I want to emphasize is that I think a lot of games go for tactical depth, but oftentimes it's more about the tactical depth gets lost in the creation of the character and in the system rather than the choices that are made. So how do we bring tactics back? Well, first things first, as a player, I encourage you to know your build. When I'm talking about a build, I mean understanding what are the rules of the game and how does my character interact with it. So knowing your build is all about understanding how do you actually play the game so you can do that effectively. But then within those frameworks, what does my character do? I'll give a little non-RPG example. And so I enjoy doing a little bit of Magic the Gathering on occasion. So I've got a few decks here. I do some gaming, as the youth say. And so when I come to play a game of Magic the Gathering and I bring a new deck, I should know what is the goal of my deck, what are the interactions and the synergies that my deck has, so that I can play it and pilot it effectively. And so it's twofold. Number one, I can use that to make optimal decisions. I can, with the resources that I have, I can try to utilize them effectively. But number two, it's also actually a sign of respect to the table in that by not knowing the rules, if I'm slowing down the table by not understanding what I can do or my abilities, then I'm actually doing a disservice to the table. In my last video, I may have raised the ire a little bit of some of our rules-heavy gamers. I did my rules nerd impression where I was like, well, my character can actually jump 4.7 meters. And I understand how that could have been hurtful. But understand that that was coming from a place of wanting people to have the best possible games. And I would say that if your interest in the rules ever detracts from the overall table experience, the overall highlight of RPGs being story-driven and fast and fun and flexible, then maybe you should reevaluate your engagement with those rules. So, however, in a spirit of charity, I've got a bit for, you rules-heavy gamers. I'll do a quick bit at the expense of us story gamers. And so we story gamers to you, this is what we look like. So I noticed that you have a rule book and there was numbers in it. I'm a story gamer and I've got a theater degree. So how do you expect me to play a game that's got numbers that's interfering with my acting? It's like, there you go, rules-heavy gamers. Don't say I never did anything for you. And because that was so funny and engaging, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Back to the video. Also, just as a side note, I love tactical gaming. Final Fantasy Tactics. I mean, hey, I've got like the rule book. I've spent many an hour playing a tactical game, and I've spent many an hour in an RPG book like Pathfinder coming up with builds for the character that I will likely never play. And so it's not that I don't enjoy tactics, but I want the tactics to matter. Let me give it a quick example and an illustration of when do I feel like, even with a game that's considered very tactical, something like a Dungeons & Dragons or a Pathfinder, when do those tactics actually not matter? Let's go ahead and hop on over to our board over here, and let's give an example. So let's say you're playing some sort of a space RPG or like a cyberpunk, and this happens. You walk onto a street, and in comes the big bad boss, a scary android. He's very scary. 2-player characters are approaching. And by the way, I'm using zone-based combat. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on that started the whole rules-heavy controversy, go check out my last video. Anyway, let's get back to the zones. So the boss appears. All right, player 1 approaches in the zone. He sees the boss. He swings his electro sword, and he misses. Okay, player 2 approaches. He swings, and he hits. Now the boss, he is going to use his electro fist, and he's going to hit. And we continue back and forth until one of the players is out of health. That, even if your build is incredibly engaging, I don't consider that remarkably tactical because it's just an example of health dropping, whose health drops first. I don't find that super tactical. So that's my goal here. It's not to bash on rules-heavy systems, but the goal is how do we make fights actually matter, and how do we make them tactically engaging? And now let's go to a source that I think is a really great idea to get a few ideas of how we can do that more effectively. Let's take a look at one of my favorite games of all time, and that is going to be Into the Breach. This is a really fun tactical game where players take on the role of a squadron of mechs as they're trying to stop these giant bugs from ravaging a city. What's interesting about this game is that the bugs are always telegraphing their attacks, and so you can always see what is coming next. The battlefield is often changing at a rapid pace, and oftentimes one hit can be the difference between a mission succeeding or a mission failing. So what I've done in this video, in the second part, this advice for GMs, is what can you take away and what can you learn from this game, and how can you make your fights more tactical? These are principles that, it's not just from this game, but these are principles that you can take and apply to your games and hopefully make them more exciting. So let's go ahead and go up to the board here and talk about these four things that it does. Having varied objectives, surrounding your players with choices, introducing timers and clocks, and that survival is always uncertain. If you've played this game, you know that all of those things are true for Into the Breach, but let's talk about applying them to a game of Dungeons & Dragons or your favorite role-playing game. Having varied objectives. If the goal is always just who can punch harder faster, those fights are going to get stale. It's going to be a stale fight. It's not going to be dynamic. So can you make things different? So sometimes maybe it's protect somebody, or maybe sometimes it's get an item and get out, or sometimes it might be sneak through an area that you have no chance of actually winning the fight. Make it so that the players have to accomplish different things. And again, some of you guys pointed out in the last video that these games are built around the rules of combat, and sometimes like some of those rules would mean that if you're avoiding combat, then you're actually kind of limiting the scope of the game. And I agree with that, but the idea is that you want to make tactics is about choices, right? Having choices that matter. So if it's always the same thing and you're not making a choice, you're building a machine that does the same thing over and over again. Give choices, make things that are different. Number two, so speaking of choices, surrounding the players with things to interact with. So give them things that they can approach, that they can do differently. So different types of entrances, different environmental factors, different allies or people that might be swayed in the middle of the fight. Make it so that the players have lots of different things that could potentially interact the battlefield. The more variables that you have, the more chances that the player's input can actually change the outcome of the fight. Now, like with any advice, if you go too crazy and you put them 50 different things that they can interact with, it's like too many Cheerios on the table for a little kid. That could be overwhelming. So find that right number, find what works for your table. Number three is giving timers and clocks. Another game that is often talked about in the RPG hobby is Blades in the Dark, and I've got a picture of some clocks here. A clock is just a way to track how far something has happened. So it would start at 0, and as something approaches, you add 1 segment, 2, 3, and eventually 4. But a clock is just a way to be saying, is something going to happen soon? It's giving a time limit to the goal that you are trying to create so that there's a bit of a time stake there. The battlefield should not just remain the same the entire battlefield. New enemies can emerge. Maybe a room might flood, or maybe there might be a new danger that's exposed, or maybe the thing that they're chasing, the treasure, is only available for a certain amount of time. Make it so that there's a time limit so that the players are always being moved forward. And there's some great content in Index Card RPG that talks more about that if you want to learn more about that. And then lastly, survival should always be uncertain. In the OSR community, the old school Renaissance, that is kind of a core pillar. It's that your player, even if you've had an incredible build, there's always a chance that your next fight could be your last. That makes things matter. It should not just be two powerful forces slapping each other until one falls. There should always be a chance that your player this could be the end of the road, and that makes something matter. So with these principles, let's put those all together and make this fight that we just talked about more exciting. So we want to have varied objectives. Let's say one of the characters is absolutely invested in destroying this android. Maybe it's a mission, maybe the android attacked his family. It could be any manner of things. So let's say we're going to have a cool boss chamber here. The android is there. One player definitely wants to destroy that. And number two, though, let's say that this is some sort of a secret facility. And so there is one of the other characters, he's got a family member that's in stasis that's being researched on in here. And then finally, this is all part of like a front of a shop that looks like a normal shop, but this is like the secret facility is nestled in there. So, with varied objectives, one player wants to destroy the android for revenge. One player wants to save their brother, and maybe another player is just, maybe there's some files on one of the computers that would exonerate them and get them out of prison. So when the players have multiple things to do or different goals, it can make it so that you have to make different choices in the moment. So giving varied objectives. Number 2, give the players choices. So back to our board, maybe that you could try to sneak in from the front entrance, or maybe there's a sewer entrance from the other area, or maybe you could even try to be captured, get into the holding facility, but then you could, awaken yourself from the slumber, et cetera, et cetera. So multiple approaches to get into the building, but also another thing to consider is that give each of the rooms a unique feature. So for example, maybe in the secret lair, you can get in through the sewer, but that also means that you could potentially flood the room. Maybe if you open up these cell doors, it would make a distraction, but some of the people in there are criminals, and so they might come after you. Maybe on the front of the street, it's heavily guarded by androids, but there might be a chance to hack into them. So giving some sort of an interesting little tidbit or something that the players might be able to use makes it so that the players have to make decisions on the fly and actually interact with the battlefield. Number 3, timers and clocks. So in 4 turns, no matter what, this android is going to get out. Can you get to him before and shut him down before he gets out? Or in 2 turns, maybe the room is going to start flooding, or the police are going to arrive, et cetera, et cetera. Make it so that there is stakes to the fight. And then lastly, make it so that when you introduce a villain that matters, when you have a fight that matters, it truly could be the end of the road pretty quickly. So in my opinion, by having those principles, variance and stakes and all those things put together, we've taken a fight that would have just been a little bit boring, and now the players, they can interact with all sorts of different things, and they can truly have some more tactical decision making. What should I do in the moment? But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Is that tactics, or am I just a story gamer trying to cope with the fact that I don't have a Pathfinder group? Did you find any of this advice interesting? Let me know in the comments, and I appreciate you guys watching and sticking around. So, this has been our video on tactics. Let me know what we should talk about next time in Templar's Tabletop. But until next time, happy gaming, God bless, and have a great day.